Hello, hello. We would like to invite you inside for the super exciting conversation about the future of AI and the pricing part. Anyone there? Yeah, so just give them like 1 minute, but I also don't want to punish the punctual ones, as they say in Germany. Schnelles Harris. Schnelles Harris is the one. Okay, guys, so without further ado, I believe that we can start having this conversation. And just let me just put my stuff here, so it's not like interrupting me. My name is Maciej Wilczyński. I am a managing partner and founder of Valueships. Valueships is a SaaS pricing consultancy, tech consultancy. What we do is we do pricing. We help companies become more profitable with the pricing. So it's not only about increasing prices. It's all about like taking the packaging in, taking all the aspects of fundamentally ensuring that your product delivers delivers more value, because pricing is all about the value. Chris mentioned that you met Chris, like this guy. You met him on like the first day presentation. He was this Buster Rhymes of pricing guy, super fast speaking, 144 slides within 30 minutes. But basically, today I will be covering the 8 fundamental shifts that are happening in SaaS pricing. And honestly, like, we are in the situation where no one knows anything, right? It's like literally we are like, it's a big whole clusterfuck. No one knows anything when it comes to AI pricing. We are completely clueless. We don't know where it goes. We basically are kind of like, it's a fog of war type of stuff, type of situation. And so me, with all this darkness, there's like a light in the tunnel, I believe. What you'll see here is my own first approach towards how you can do SaaS pricing. So basically, I won't be covering this. I'm a managing partner, used to work at McKinsey, 70 projects done. Basically, I have PhD in SaaS pricing, so I am official. And we also own the proprietary database of 7,000 pricing pages. So a lot of the stuff that I'm covering, and including these reports that were like there, for instance, and you can download them there, they're coming basically from our database. But our clients, the marketing team. Okay, so look, so we're in the situation that we're probably in like we're standing against like the biggest tech revolution since the internet, right? Like, generally, this is probably true, but at the same time, we believe that it's better to go with like per seat traditional subscription model, right? And this is something that we're doing. The problem is that most AI companies try to stick to the good old subscription, and fundamentally, I believe this is wrong due to numerous reasons that I'll be covering in a second. Because I believe there are like 8 shifts. And you have like 8 fundamental shifts that are happening, and I'll be covering each of them during this workshop. I strongly encourage you to ask questions and stop me during this conversation. It's not a presentation I'll be covering. I'll be trying to talk about this. But basically, not everyone is familiar with how the infrastructure of the products look like. So in any product, like in any cloud product, you basically have the infrastructure behind. This is all like the server powers, like fueling your SaaS business. Like, this is like usually running on cloud, on the AWS, Google Cloud, whatever, but it's generally the infrastructure that is built on it. On that infrastructure, I'm simplifying, so sorry tech people, but I'm simplifying this here. On top of that, you have the model. That is basically all this like GPUs, NVIDIA, people there on this computing power. There is like a model that is creating in this computing power, right? So here comes the OpenAI, Anthropic, all these actual generative AI natives. So the companies that actually invented their own models. And that's critical, right? Because there is a difference between having a SaaS or like a product in the AI space and being a company owning hundreds of thousands of GPU NVIDIA cards, actually building models and training them and, owning their own nuclear plants, right? So it's a different story. And on top of that, you have the application layer. And most likely 99.99% of you will be in this situation, right? So some of you might have servers, some of you even might have like some models that they have trained, but in most cases you will be building the products on existing model layer. Why so? Previously, this was electricity cost, so it was not that expensive. This is more electricity. That's why, for the first time, we kind of have to consider this part into the equation, into the pricing equation. Because previously, it was like laying the railroad track. Once you put the railroad, going with trains is almost free, right? Obviously, there's like maintenance of these trains, but the biggest capital cost is still into actually building the product, not in serving the every next customer. So once you get this, and we have covered that, so basically, in order to monetize the AI, you have infrastructure and workflows that have so all these like Microsoft, Azure, Apache stuff. Then you have like the data that you need to have. So the like applications like Snowflake, all the data applications that you have, all the things that you basically have. So it can be your CRM, it can be anything, but basically you need to have the data. And you need to have the tools like, for instance, Hugging Face that has like already pre-trained things. So basically take this and put it into the model, right? This is how it works. And the model is obviously Claude, it can be the ChatGPT, it can be the Llama, open source ones, it doesn't matter. But the key thing is like it creates, you see, Kajik? It creates outputs, right? So for instance, for Surfer AI, great product, I strongly recommend it. It creates outputs, right? So every SEO optimized article, and this is your output. You see, this is already changed. It's not like you have access to server. Yes, that's one thing, but on top of that, you also have the output. In Grammarly, you pay for like actually, you know, a platform reviewing your what you write, and then you can have outcomes. So we're taking more of the success but more of the risk at the same time with. Okay, you only pay for a good resolution. So not that we have resolved it, but we have resolved it in a good, positive way, right? So this is important to understand how the overall kind of value chain of the AI works. So with this boring introduction, we can actually get into the cool stuff, which is work delivers instead of just access. So previously, you know, like we had this situation of you pay for a subscription and you can do whatever you want with this platform. I don't care. Whatever you want, right? So this was the access, like either via seat or user-based. This was something that was fundamental for software. Now, we switch from this to actual work delivered. And so, in other words, are you familiar with the jobs to be done framework? So it's kind of like jobs to be done squared now, right? So you can actually do the work with AI. So this is this kind of also like somewhat philosophical thing with the AI, that you can actually do the work with these agents, and Kazik will be covering this later on. So in order to understand it, you need to think of how I deliver the value of my product. So imagine that your product creates certain profit for the company, either via like increased revenue, decreased costs, whatever, right? So you either do this, you either do that. You can calculate it for pretty much every product. So in opportunities generated, average price of opportunity, you can save some hours, right? And roughly, this whole value gives you like $500, right, on every customer. This is how much you can get with the product. And honestly, you can calculate it for every B2B value proposition, like how many hours you save, how many like more leads you bring, and all this stuff. I very much recommend you to try calculating this on your own, because very often like the companies I work with go with like, so what is our value proposition actually? Because it's very hard for them to even justify it by the simple calculation. But fundamentally, how much should I charge out of this value, right? So I understand that I created certain value, right? Like a whole pool of value as we created, and how can I deliver it to people? So it all comes to two axes. And first is like how tangible and concrete is the value. So this is what I said, like money, right? And I calculated. And second thing is how big is the direct contribution to success. So previously, this was easy. You could calculate the value of pretty much every product. Not everyone was doing it, but you know, if you're into enterprise software, like Marek, for instance, you need to probably provide like the ROI use cases, all these value stories, like Luzmo, right? What will happen if I introduce your product? What will be the ROI of this implementation? this was doable for most. I mean, not for most people, but generally doable. But the contribution, you know, because you still had to put all the data inside, still do work on the product. The thing was not working on its own. It still required people. Now this has changed. So this is kind of like how much of the value you can share. So if you're there, you can take 50%. If less, then 20%. So as long as you can justify these two, you can do it. If less, then it's obviously less. So you look, I can justify this both from the value of 500, I can take half. If not, I'm taking about 100. If less, I'm somewhere here. So the problem with your pricing usually, now even if, doesn't matter if it's an AI thing or not, kinda always comes to these two things. Like, can I justify it? Like, am I taking shit out of your plate? And am I justifying this correctly, right? These two things. And you can be better in, you can focus on one, but now you can also have the best of two worlds, right? Therefore, increasing your prices up. And that's the whole thing that is happening, because you can increase prices with the AI. So, and why? Let me show you this. So this is your traditional software, right? We install it, you CD, or like servers. Yeah, do whatever you want with that. I don't care. It was like this. Like throughout the ages, it was like this. Fun fact, do you know that still 75% of software is on premise? SaaS is just 25% of the overall like software market. It's crazy. So no, it's not that. It's like killing a 3-year-old child. Then it's like a subscription model, right? So we kind of invented this subscription, which was, you know, we started to care because of the certain recurrency, that was a recurring model, right? We had to care because there were like renewals, so pretty much every customer makes a business purchasing decision every month, every year, and so on. So we started to care more about the value we're delivering. Then we had some romance with usage-based components, so pay-as-you-go stuff. Remember, there was a thing that most companies were subscription and some most sophisticated companies were on usage. Now, most companies are on usage, and most sophisticated companies will be on work and output delivered, right? So this is another. So in other words, subscription is like effectively like a diesel car today, and usage is electric car, kind of like a new standard, right? So this is like the switch. So all this goes like this. So if you're thinking about building a subscription product, it's like building it on like old infrastructure. It's like having checks while you have, you know, crypto, effectively, right? And then in the future, this is still available to very few cases. We might have something like success-based. So, you know, actually ROI, business sharing, and things like this. So how to explain this in terms of AI? So imagine you're hiring someone for an hourly rate, like a consultant, like an agency business, whatever. So you will usually pay them, no matter if they do the shitty job, right? In most cases, you will pay them. Like the logo was not great, but you'll still pay them. Maybe not everything, but you'll pay them, right? You will probably want to kind of have the good situation with them. So, but this, you still kind of like pay for the actual work done. Like with your employees, you pay them. You may fire them, but you'll pay them even if they do the bad job. So this is AI pricing now. So the outputs may not be great, and they will still charge you for it. So all this, you know, like bad prompts still cost you something, right? All this like outputs, like bad mid-journey images, they will cost you something, right? So this is the whole thing. So paying for work doesn't mean paying for success. This is important. So most of you will be building a product for work payments. So, you know, an output doesn't equal outcome. So output is, I will write you a good piece of content. Outcome is, I will write a content so good that it will bring you 10 leads, and I want a fraction of it. It's a bigger stretch, higher risk, but potentially the reward is much more doable. So basically, if you want to move in the value chain, you'll move from here to here, right? So this is like, you remember these guys, they were also paid for work, not for the output. Have you seen the rebranding of Jaguar? Yeah, they were paid for the ad. But actually considering like the overall like brand equivalent they generated, and then, you know, kind of the value of the ads and the buzz, not a bad job. So with this fundamental shift, we can now cover new pricing metrics that are the most important ones. So look, so you have these like monkeys here, And they are also in the report if you want to have a deep dive into that. But traditionally we had like licenses, right? I've covered this. So this was like Homo erectus or whatever, like old monkey, right? It was very old, like back ago. Like Bill Gates remembers it. So this is where we are at. Then we had someone invented, with the subscription, someone invented like some tiering, if there can tier the feature access, we can do some bandwidth limits, maybe it can be based on time, so all these like more creative metrics that happen. So on top of that, later on, someone figured out, like we have a lot of this computing power, so maybe let's think of credits, Some companies still today, even subscription companies, have a lot of credit system. They try to play with usage-based, maybe pay-as-you-go, but the AI natives go with input and output tokens, right? So they go in input and output tokens, they have resources that are used, and this is what is the market standard. In other words, it's like all these PPC companies, they stick to the Google's ecosystem, right? Because of obvious reasons. Or like if you're like in social media, you will be sticking to what Meta tells you, right? So right now we'll be probably sticking to the model that the market creator, which is like OpenAI, Anthropic, and all these like big boys like Google, to the market standard they have invented, right? So we'll be playing on their framework, on their platform, right? That's critical here, right? So if you're thinking of this and this is like kind of long gone, this is kind of pushing it forward. But where we can add the value, so we can add the value on like markupping the credits. So there's a credit of like, the token costs like $3, like input, output, like all these like thousands and tens of thousands tokens, they cost that much. So we'll make a markup of like 30% or 70% or 80%. That's one thing, but it's like kind of like selling apples. Like I bought them for $1, I'm selling them for $1.50, cost-based, but you will add value with the product layer. And the product layer can be your output approach. So for instance, resolutions, completed tasks, workflows, generated outputs, quality validated completions, like more interaction-based models, right? In which you actually get it all. And if I want to be full futuristic, there is like a conversation that there will be something like ROI as a service model, and you have like success sharing, fees at risk, even betting systems, auctions, that basically you will be betting yourself against the AI, whether I will do the job or not, and it's all like crypto and it's like crazy shit. But basically this is something that where we might be going, but this is realistic. So just to conclude this part, and this is I think essential of understanding how to price the AI. Kind of subscription, no more. Processing based, yes. And this is like a standard. But if you want to get value, this is what is achievable. But don't get me wrong. You cannot abandon subscription because there are like all other things that are happening. Like, you need to have the recurring revenue. I'll be coming back in a second. So we need to be smart on that. So we have some trailblazers, and just connect me if you want to have the examples. But we have some trailblazers in the field. So look, you have OpenAI and Clay. OpenAI is like clearly input-output token. Clay is credit-based, right? You put data point interaction. But Salesforce moved to like $2 per conversation. Work done. Not like whether it was good conversation or bad conversation. It was a conversation happened, pay me. Right? It's like, that's it. So you see, this happens. So these guys were like processing credits. These guys, a little bit more value between this and that. Here we have more value with $2 per conversation. Imagine per AI photo edited. So slightly more value, like it's edited, so probably better edited. And then you have Zapier, tasks automated, so actually saving hours. And then you have Intercom with 99 cents per AI resolution and a successful AI resolution. So your customer needs to give like thumbs up or thumbs down. If they do this, you don't pay. If they do this, they pay, you pay. Right? And in the end, you can go in and further, like charge flow, 25% per successful chargeback recovered. So you only pay when we successfully recover something for you, right? So basically, you see, like, the overall like cafeteria of options is quite huge, but at the same time, even like the big boys cannot make it huge. But like in our situation, we probably can. And also what we have realized, and this is why I really want you to drop the user-based pricing, is like user-based pricing gets actually pressured by the procurement departments, to reduce the prices per seat in the renewals, all these little Jira reps are getting like pressures all the time because of that. But so in our reports, we have realized that companies with seat model actually decrease prices. Companies with non-seat model actually manage to increase prices because they manage to like kind of, go with the better value component of it. So we have covered WorkMet, we have covered this, and now here comes the tricky part, because as I told you, if I would tell you this, I would tell you like only part of the story. And this is unfortunately also critical, and will be critical for the next 2 to 3 years. So we had this like, hey, every next product was essentially free, not anymore. And it will be at least for two next years. Because the SaaS unit economics was like this, right? Like we had like, we have like, it was almost free once you build the product. Versus traditional goods, you always have this like cost of, plastic or whatever you need to produce, electricity, it was not. So basically it was close to zero marginal cost. Not anymore. Now every SaaS unit has a marginal cost because I'm working with the AI and stuff and everything. So it generally takes more and more computing power to produce even more complicated models, and that's the fact. Even if you assume that Chinese people like build like 6 million model, in fact it was around 1.3 billion. And even if, do you have $6 million to spend on a model? Like, maybe some of you, yes. But even if, right? Even if like going with open source model, you probably can't buy like 10,000 NVIDIA chips. Even if you had like money for that, it's the same with like servers. You could have like, you were not building them, right? This is the point. So you didn't purchase computing power, and you don't purchase, like you didn't build computer power as a small player, and you also don't build model power as a small player. So it's exactly the same problem, but this one is a bigger problem because it's more expensive. So this is one thing. And at the same time, the costs of the intelligence, they roughly decrease 10x by every 12 months. So it's faster than the Moore's law. So it gets cheaper and cheaper and cheaper and cheaper, but in 2 to 3 years. So in other words, it will be almost marginal in 2 to 3 years. So long time, I don't care on costs. Short time, I have to. So your pricing for 2025 will be different for 2026 and will be different for 2027. So as we move on, people won't be, so AI actually managed to increase, these categories managed to increase prices. So as we move on, people would like to get rid out of the paying just for fuel, right? Because this is what we're having, we're paying just for fuel, right? And this is something that we won't have. So in other words, you really need to rethink your cost structure. So getting the analytics quickly, getting like the Excels of how much you actually spend on that, the operations part of the AI, right? And also like Andrew covered it yesterday on his chat at Paddle, like having the conversation on that, having a conversation around how I essentially, what is my cost base, and also how much of the credits, like how much of these tokens, like my people consume, like my customers consume, is critical here. So, as I said, this is where we are right now. So we have the fuel, like OpenAI and all these guys, right? So this is the model guys. And we have the product layer. That's why I started from the infrastructure. So we are here. So the problem today is fuel is expensive, way more than traditional SaaS. And the problem here is like that most apps are like ChatGPT wrapper, like that's it. So they're like commercially immature. So we need to fix this problem. So we charge on consumption, this problem on the fuel, and this one we try to, hey, we're great, we go freemium, blah, 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 it's all great. So remember all these apps, remember like this was 2011, 12, like the start of the bubble, right? All these apps were like freemium, good, better, best, so this is kind of the moment we're there, right? But what will change is like people basically will drop the fuel model because they will have their own payments of ChatGPT. So why I need to have my own ChatGPT subscription plus pay you? I want to plug in my own like tokens and basically play with that. So this is one thing. So why should I pay for the fuel? Like pay me for the value added that is getting out of your product. And at the same time, from this perspective, because you are like building the subscription, you want to ensure that you have some fair usage policies to cover your back, right? Because it's like, if the consumption goes like, you don't have a subscription, right? So this comes the problem of me wanting to have a more value of the usage-based options, but at the same time, me wanting to have my back covered. And this is just crazy. And I'm super hyped on that. So as an example, you can see Clay. Like right now, they're charging for fuel, and they already kind of moving to charging more for the value. And Confluence, this is where they were. Like they had a product, and they tried to add some AI features, right? So fuel-heavy tools will go with something like buy credits, while the legacy ones will probably go with something like, hey, we have some AI features in our products, but they will be limited with bandwidth, so you don't overconsume our costs effectively. So this comes when we have this. So this builds the multi-layer architecture. So what multi-layer architecture is this. So it's previously the simplified pricing model was value metrics and features, like roughly speaking. Like there were like obviously add-ons, but roughly speaking, this was the pricing model. It was this. But now it's like product. So there's like old SaaS model. On top of that, you have features that were there, and then you have AI layers. So the overall like kind of thing kind of becomes like this. So you had like a simplified classic burger with standard value metrics, good, better, best thing, old school playbook. Now you have, so now all this goes in here, and you have like some add-ons on top of that, new value metrics possible, AI on top of the current model. And in fact, this is what even Sam Altman mentioning, and the way out of it is hybrid pricing. So you have some subscription layer, and you add pricing on top, the AI pricing on top, right? And this is the way out of the situation. Does that remind you of something? Like you pay for subscription and anyone? Early telco charges. Remember, you paid like for like the subscription, like whatever, the broadband. Exactly. You pay for this, and then if you like got more of the usage, you actually paid for it. It's like taxi, right? You pay for the closing the doors. It's like flat fee, and then you pay more for that. Yeah. So this is the thing that can be super good for you, because you go with like $49 or $99 per subscription, and then add an AI layer on top. You're covered from both sides, right? You're covered from the subscription side and also from that side. So this might be super useful for you. And this is already like this, like Replit starts from $25, and then you can buy more automations, more credits. Sorry, like Monday has this, right? You have like the Monday subscription, and on top you can buy more credits. So this is one of the situations in which you can cover yourself. And in fact, even Sam Altman says that it probably is like the right way to go. So it's even called, like, to be specific, it's called two-part tariff, right? That you have one and the second model, and it's usually good for most companies. But for all of those of you that have the AI product, that have existing software products and want to move the AI, I believe that, okay, so kind of we understand that we need to work on the like price for output. We understand that many more things are possible. Okay, I have calculated the cost, and I understand that it might be a good way to think of the multi-layered architecture here, but I have an existing business. I have 1,000 customers, hundreds of customers. So what can I do here? Here comes the add-ons. And I believe add-ons are like your secret weapon in this. As incumbent companies, add-ons are your secret weapon versus the native AI companies. Because most of the features, and Chris told you about that, like recently on this like BMW example, most of the features are like premium. The features that you want to think of is like how important they are and what is the willingness to pay. And premium features are somewhere here. This is like core features, everyone has them. These are like add-ons, and Trashland, you simply shouldn't care. And I use this loop, which was actually invented during the project with Surfer. We did, and then I kind of used this loop multiple times, and I believe this is useful. So most companies go like this. So they come with a new feature. So we did the research. Let's implement this, and most companies put it into the everything, right? We just added this feature. There's the release. Everyone's so happy. LinkedIn goes crazy. This 5 likes, and everyone is so super happy with what happened on the feature. Because, yeah, we have this awesome feature, we gave it to every customer because we are like developing our product. Awesome. And what if, a crazy question, what if when you add value, you charge for the value? Well, it's like a tricky question, right? But what if SaaS founders started to charge for the value, so when they're improving their product, they charge more for it? Like, it's like you getting a new iPhone because you own the previous iPhone. Kinda. Because technically, Apple users are like subscription Apple users. Like, you know, it's like I have seen this. Like, as an Apple user, as an iPhone user, I want a new iPhone. It's like whole job done, right? So basically, you have this new feature. But what you can do, and it's so more firms would give it everywhere, but we'll make an add-on of it. So probably, you know, when 0 to like 10%, like basically, you get some traction on this product, so you get this as an add-on. And then it starts getting popular. And when it gets popular, you move it to the premium because it's a kind of adopts. So usually you can do it like above 10, 15%. So until like 10% of the adoption, it's always be an add-on. Rule of thumb, obviously. But if it's more, then it's like 15, maybe 20%. So there was this chart that roughly 3%, 1 to 3% is the average like penetration of add-ons. So this is somewhere where you can land. If more, then it's a popular add-on. But the key thing is like if some of these features like get really popular, and there are cases like this, that they transform the entire product. So you go into premium. It's getting better, let's put it in the premium. Yeah, probably it's a market standard, competition has this. So we just put it into base packaging. And then we kind of put it like everyone has a trash land. It's not that we drop it, we just don't communicate this as a cool thing, right? And this is kind of the whole thing. And you know, this whole loop can end in any moment because like it just won't grow faster. It's like all this, that not every SaaS company will become a unicorn kind of right situation. And not, so if you look at that, this is exactly this, right? This is the kind of, so the way I always see it is like, you know what was 500 years ago, what 1,000 people mean? It was a medieval town with their own market, their own farms, their own like places to visit for hospitality, to drink, to eat, probably a castle or garrison or whatever, like basically serving an internal market. So think of this, you already have these people in your castle behind the walls, so just sell them shit, right, basically. This is they're like your customers without the acquisition cost already. So think of your customers as an existing market. Like if you have like 1,000 of customers, few thousand customers, even like 50 customers, you don't have the CAC to them. So that's why the expansion revenue in SaaS can get so exciting because you're selling to the people that already know your product, they know the value, you have no CAC except like sending them emails, which is quite cheap. So that's the whole point. So it's exactly like with adopting. So we have like this small markets, right, situation, and small products, and this is actually, if you look at that from this perspective, it usually goes like this. We have a company, we have brands, we have products, we have sub-products, we have modules, we have sub-modules, then we have features, right? So it exactly, so what started as a feature may become a product one day. And the thing is, you don't need to kill the entire monetization, your entire monetization engine at the AI altar, and try pushing them via add-ons. Let me show you some examples. So Notion, what Notion did is they pushed their AI with add-on, like click, 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 click. You can just simply add it or not. From what I have seen, right now they have about 15% of the overall population of Notion users actually getting into AI. You would say it was super successful, right? But it's still only like 15%. Because they like publish like how many people like use it versus all like Notion subscriptions. We also need to remember that we are in the kind of a bubble, right? So the adoption is not that strong yet. But this is how they started it, and basically this is where they still stick. But Loom, they went the further in the cycle because they started as an add-on, $4 for creator, and they pushed it into the premium packaging later on as it adopted. You see, so they did this whole part of the loop, and then Pipedrive started from add-ons, then it was in premium packages, and later they put it into the more base package, justifying the overall price increase across all, because they simply added the value and they moved higher in the value chain. So this was the way for them. So this is also super interesting, right? So this is something that you can do. And kind of coming back to the almost final moments of this is hybrid revenue reporting. So how hard it is for you to actually report the revenue nowadays with the AI. So there's the only fun MRR example, I believe. It's like from Dave Kellogg. I strongly recommend his presentations and his view on SaaS. But basically, a guy walks into a bar and orders a $17 martini, right? And is it MRR? Well, if he's a tourist who just stopped by, then it's no. But if he's lived there for 2 years and come every Thursday, definitely. But what if he goes on a vacation? Is it churn? Or then it's an expansion, renewal? And or do we damn him somehow? How we should associate it? There's the volatility in payments, right? If he just brings in and says that this will be his weekly bar, so it's like a new business, but still didn't activate yet. And if it's a club with $2,000 annual membership, and occasionally he gets slammed, so you have an annual recurring revenue, and sometimes you can even have overage model because some days he drinks 3 martinis. So with this example, you can pretty much understand that this is exactly the same with your AI consumption. So I buy credits, I go build all this stuff, and then what? Bang, no consumption at all. So attributing this properly in your finance, so what is an annual recurring revenue and what is not, it will be a super, super huge thing. So what will it impact? It will impact the valuation, because your multiples are not pure SaaS multiples anymore. So it's like all these SaaS companies that had SaaS business and service business, right? You had to divide them into 2 multiples. Now, the thing is they still didn't figure how these multiples will work. They're just trying to adhere to these new standards. But basically the idea is that this is something that we need to redefine. So previously in the ARR you had recurring revenue from the subscriptions. In any way, this was the recurring, that's it, right? But now you have this. On top of that, you have payments for tokens. You have contract minimums that you need to include. You have baselines, some variable separations, and even more, you can have transactional revenue on that. So professional services that come on top to serve this, so installations and stuff. I wouldn't like to be a finance guy trying to think this. I mean, it's a creative job to kind of think this, and probably they will, but it is definitely tricky. And try explaining this, how it works, and why you're requiring this multiple, right? It's definitely is going to happen. In fact, this guy's already tried. Have you heard of him? So it's a crazy story. So what this guy did is they forced prospects into signing 12-month contracts with a 3-month break clause instead of proper trials, because this was the only way to work with us because of the volatility of our metrics, and you never know the usage, all this story, and they're they counted the full year value in their ARR calculation, and even their customers terminated at the break clause. So technically that was true, but this was a kind of shenanigan, right, thing. And the funny thing is with 70 to 80% of their customers churning, they reported 14 million, while the actual continuing revenue was 3 million. So that's a finance fiction, right? I don't have any problem with Anderson Horowitz being screwed. It's good. But basically, you will have more of them. And Dirk, on his presentation, but also on his LinkedIn, recently said that he already gets these stories, Dirk Salmer from SaaS Group, when they're purchasing software. He already has 5 or 6 of them, obviously on a smaller scale, when they're trying to do this with the overall finance. So this will be crazy in terms of reporting, but it's also what will affect? It will affect your sales reps. How to give commission to sales reps nowadays, of the new deal, of the subscription, of how much they consume in the end. This will be crazy, right? It will affect your valuation, it will affect your reporting, and obviously it will affect your cash flow, and it will also affect your capital needs. Because how am I going to actually kind of project this? So speeding the finance game and getting to the right problem will be a thing. Being completely honest, there is no market standard yet for that. I believe that whoever rethinks it, wink wink, might have a very decent agency service business, like rethinking the SaaS reporting within the age of AI might be a pretty cool business opportunity, I would say. Probably if I were not in pricing, I would do it. So this is something that is important. The last two things, just to not bore you to the end, so it's from Benelux. Basically only 20% of the, because we believe that Benelux is overall good representation of the overall market, European market. So basically 20% of these companies have AI features only, you see? It's still a bubble. But the AI products roughly have 30 to 40% higher prices. So the companies with AI, so in other words, while there is research that proves that AI doesn't increase the willingness to pay, the market sends this as an opportunity to have some price increase justification. So us as a customers wouldn't like to pay more for a product because of it's an AI product. In some cases, it's actually less. But overall, companies use this, it's an AI, it's a value add, like we charge more. So it's like this kind of paradox situation that is happening. But still, 30 to 40% market premium you can get just by having AI features. Pretty cool. And we also know that these companies generate money faster than their SaaS incumbents. So they get into this like annual revenue of like 5 million much faster in like 25 months instead of like 35. Similarly, we're getting this kind of Jevons paradox that, you know, as it gets more efficient and more accessible, we will like, kind of see this use skyrocket. So people will want to have this. Definitely this will adapt, and this is something that we already know that will adapt. But also there are super many bottlenecks, and the biggest bottlenecks are in data management, and it's growing, actually. So remember this first, you need to have good data to plug it into the model, so this is where we're at. So if you really want to scale AI, you'll be probably needing, like you'll probably need to help your customers with the data problem. So, guys, this gives a huge opportunity to professional services. I had to. But this gives a huge opportunity to professional services because you will need to have someone actually like doing the project part, removing the bottlenecks, so increase the adoption. Obviously, the product can do it on itself, but let's face it, like the biggest adoptions of AI we're going to see will be the enterprise adoptions. These are the ones that matter, not your like, you know, LinkedIn automation thing. Because it's nice, but it's like just nice. The real business and the real business will be from this mid-market and high enterprise integrations. And because the small ones will figure it out, like how to figure out the data problem. It's like same like with like Zapier and stuff. Like if someone was agile, they will still be agile, right? But with the big guys, the data management is like huge problem. And finally, remember this? So how to attribute the ROI from the AI. And Intercom actually said, as I said, they figured it out. So if that helped, then yes. If not, then that's bad. And you have like 24 hours, and then the attribute, and they have this whole thing. Then I believe, honestly, that you can copy-paste this model, and I don't see any like kind of bad things in this, like honestly. So I would just copy-paste it if I were you. Like if you really think of like doing something like this, obviously. But the thing is like who is responsible for the client success? How to prove it, right? Who is actually responsible here? This is the tricky question, more futuristic. And like last kind of 2 minutes before we get into questions. So remember there's like European Data Act coming in on September 2025, so in like 4 months. And this will change the pricing game and the way what you can do with the contracts. So basically the key ideas and the key changes are following. So no extra charge for data fees. So users must basically they will have to have free access to their own data. So you must always allow customers to export their contact and sales, for instance, contact and sales data to another platform at no extra charge. So you will have to build this feature. So there has to be some exporting option, and you cannot charge more for export to CSV premium feature, right? Not anymore. Not anymore. This is gone. So you need to have, in fact, the interpretation of regulators go that it's actually need to have the API access. for free. So that is, because technically the EU Data Act works, it's a very good act for customers, because there's like doing a lot of good stuff in terms of like this, bad clauses that they can, even you as customers of like Netflix subscription and stuff, it will actually makes our life as B2C customers easier. But as vendors, we just need to accommodate. Pricing wise, like you must justify the price hikes and allow users to cancel if they disagree. So basically you must explain a price hike due to inflation, and you need to always allow the customer to cancel it. So no more price increases because of price increases. You have to have a very strong catalog of reasons why you're increasing the prices in your current clauses. So basically, for instance, if it's like we are allowing ourselves to have the cost of living adjustment, and I will let you know on that. Now it's like we will have it according to the National Bank of Poland, according to the last 12 months inflation. Here you have the data, here's where we're sourcing the data, so it's kind of comparable, and you only stick to that. Whenever you do something differently, they can leave. So there's no like, hey, you still have like 2 years contract, not anymore. And the next thing is, you cannot do this kind of like impose one-sided clauses, so kind of no more take it or leave it contracts. Technically, you cannot have a contract in which you either sign this or we don't make a deal. Like, obviously, it's never works this way, but in theory, like you can basically, for instance, you cannot increase prices unilaterally, right? So without justification or notice. So you will have to always notice someone on the price increases, minimum 30 days. And in terms of vendor switching, so the migration fees, so no more exit fees for like migrating vendors, right? So as long as you can do it on your own, we can't charge you for that. Obviously, if you want our help, we can do this as a professional service thing, but not as from the product layer. So that's why we need professional services in SaaS space right now, because we'll have some things that will be hard to automate, because it's probably a bigger problem for like the bigger deals, enterprise deals, but if I was in procurement department, I would be like, that's just going to happen, right? Because there will be like a lot of money to be saved on subscriptions, right? Like I would like put, basically the action thing would be like just call your lawyers and ask them, are we prepared for that? Valueships will have a guidebook on that in like, I keep saying this for like a month, that it will be next month, but I think that this will be this month, like next month, this will actually be there. So no price increases. Like sometimes what people did was like weekly or, in next month we're changing prices. You need to have a minimum of 30 days notice, and in fact the regulators suggest more. So at least not 1 month, but at least 2 months period notice, right? So this actually makes sense. So these are like the few biggest things that are happening as well. So just to conclude, not only we have the pressure, like changes in the overall model, we also have some legal battles, and I haven't even covered tariffs that might happen on the EU and also like digital goods, because this is to be discussed. Also, if you're serving logistic customers, for instance, retail customers, the tariffs obviously are a problem for you, like e-commerce customers. So the thing is like the overall market just got more mature. So bye-bye, kind of good old times when you could. It's a business. It's an actual business right now, right? And so all these like legal aspects, even geopolitical aspects, like the aspects of whether I side with Chinese, whether I side with US, in terms of the model, will actually be a thing for the SaaS companies. So I believe this is something that we, as SaaS founders, SaaS operators, we need to be aware of, that this game just got more and more exciting, but at the same time, it just got more and more complicated, right? So this is kind of the thing that I wanted to share with you, and this is kind of like my kind of zeitgeist situation that I believe that may emerge, guys. So if you like this presentation, you can follow me on LinkedIn, Maciej Wilczyński. It was great talking to you. And we have time for questions, so I think we can, so Nick, you were first.
Thanks. For the switching costs, I was wondering, does that apply to, let's say if you have like a migration cost like as part of your software implementation? Like you have to create like a separate company to do that, or?
That's a good, that's actually a good, like, that might do the trick. That you'll just saying, hey, we cannot do it, but we have a company that does that, so that might be the way out of this. But basically, it's like you want to have them, you want to give them the ability to do it on their own, right? This is the key thing. So it's like, can you do it on your own? Yes, we can. Here's the access, migrate it on your own. This is like the CSV export, Excel export, API access. Oh, no. But can you do it on your own? No. We have a company that can help you doing this. You know, you will have like 10 hours of time, and that's it. Something like this you can do. So this is different. But I believe like for smaller ones, it won't be that a problem. But just remember that if you had like in pricing wise, if you had like exporting function as a premium function, it has to be in the base package. That's the big change. It's a problem for some smaller businesses because this was the only differentiator of plans sometimes. So API access very often is a differentiator. So that just has to go down a little bit, right? So in other words, charging for data, data access is not a premium feature. It has to be in the standard offering, so to say, right? So this is my interpretation of that. This is one thing. And second thing that is also here, so if the overall data is free, to some extent it's not premium, that's why you can add this kind of AI layer to get with the more value. So that might do the trick.
So thank you, that was amazing. In terms of outcome-based pricing, I'm quite curious where the payer is the person who is benefiting from the outcome and might downvote even though they got a good outcome so that they don't pay. How do you, in the intercom scenario, it's not the payer who is upvoting or downvoting, it is the customer. But I'm talking about scenarios where the beneficiary of the AI outcome is also the person paying.
So that's a good question. So how many of, when you have like credit card processing, how many of these credit card processing are actually frauds in your cases? So when you have like credit card, like Stripe, for instance, no, yeah, for instance, how many of you like realize that how many of them are like fraud chargebacks or like fraud cards or something like this? 1%, if 1-2%, if any. So basically, it's probably, I'm just using this as a parallel of people who are not completely honest with like usage. So that's one thing. Second thing is, you have something which is called fair usage policy, and you can put it into terms, and in the data act this will be very important for you because this is how you can, and also in the AI, because fair usage policy means something like this. You can use our platform in the free terms and it's like great, but you know, don't over-consume it. Don't make it, you know, like that you're like literally plugging yourself and telling all the data. We allow ourselves to close the access to you if you're like kind of abusing the platform, right? Because this is against our terms and blah, blah, blah. So you'll quickly see this in outliers that people downvote this. So this is one thing. At the same time, having this model in this particular situation might actually be a problem, not because of that people will be like dishonest or honest, but there will be a huge volatility in what I pay for. In other words, people love to have sorts of predictability in their costs. So on some market like US, value alignment is essential and scalability is essential, and they're fine with like different costs because they can budget it differently. But try selling volatile volumetric to Germany. No way, because this is fixed, this is how it works, it goes to our like like this. And this is normal. And in Poland, for instance, auditability of the metric is essential. So I need to know what I'm paying for. So because I'm kind of, you know, we're like, yeah, but we also like kind of not very trustful, and you want to kind of, so you want to like, I really want to know what I'm, that's why big companies end up with per seat model, because it's understandable, it's like predictable, everyone, yeah, basically that's the problem. So if you want to do something, try playing with that. So I believe in this particular situation, it might not be good to go with this downvotes and upvotes. I think so, but to get customer feedback in the same way as OpenAI did, definitely. There's this funny saying about, did you know that like the OpenAI model like stopped talking creation? Have you heard of it? Yeah, because people are doing like little downvotes to Croatia. And he learned that if I answer in Croatian, they will downvote me, so this is not a good answer, so he stopped giving Croatian answers. It's like, because they were also downvoting so much. Any other question? Anything else? How would you apply this? Well, wait, he was first.
So when you were talking about paying for fuel earlier in terms of like AI pricing and then moving towards like credits, etc. For AI models, I know Lovable is an example of this, that if you buy like 100 credits and when it has to correct itself, it will use up its own credits that you've also purchased for corrections, for credits. Would you recommend for those sort of companies, or because obviously I talk to a lot of AI companies, that they should reduce the amount that those credits cost because it's being used to even correct itself? So from a user perspective, because we're thinking about using it a little bit, is that it's a bit like, okay, I pay for 100, but you've had to, your model's had to correct itself 4 times, and it's used that. That's annoying to me as a buyer. So how would you,
So I was not covering in this presentation because obviously Chris and I, we do our own research, and he has some research, and now we need to gather them. But he was talking about true ups, right? So like energy costs. So you kind of trying to estimate the overall consumption, and then you agree together with the customer on the basis how it's going to be, basically balanced every quarter, probably a quarter is like a good beginning. So that's one thing. And if I don't know if I captured it correctly, but you were also asking if the customer is using their own model at the same time, right? Yeah, internally, yes. So this might just do the trick. Like these true ups might be the I don't know if I'm answering this question, but I believe that true ups are like it's a market standard, it's known. So just to give you like my perspective, it's like, so SaaS business, we are back to the pricing game that we know from like telco, energy sector, So basically, no more. Don't get too fancy. I would say there's a lot of fanciness in the AI, in the product itself, in the technology layer, but we can use a lot of like monetization practices from the businesses that has worse margins. That's why they're so good at monetizing, because they need to monetize better, right? So what I always say is like, play with the best, learn from the rest. And it's like kind of play with the SaaS business, with the software business that has the biggest economic profit generated, but at the same time, can you imagine if SaaS businesses applied, like dynamic pricing, like from airlines? Like it's possible, but can you imagine the multiple you can generate with such price? It's like what Intercom does. They have a good product, but at the same time, their monetization engine is outstanding, right? So they have a multiple on that as well. Another question.
So in terms of outcome-based pricing, one thing that I'm experimenting with it at Maple, and I'd love to know your thoughts, is where you have, for example, text analysis coding, rather than if the text body, the corpus, is 40,000 records, you don't want that the AI runs and tags all 40,000, and then the user says at the end of that ginormous round, I don't like how this is done. So we split so that you can approve in chunks. And I wonder whether this can help to kind of guide, because when you're saying, do this thing, AI, here's my prompt, I hope you understand me, now go, there's a high chance of misalignment. So
this is what deep research ChatGPT does, right? It asks you like some scoping questions, like 6 to 7 questions. Do you want to proceed? So you kind of have this like, you use cheaper model to validate the answer before actually giving the final answer. So that technology, this is how it's built. So when you were asking this, the deep research function in this like pro subscription, when they validate the question, they're asking this, there is a prompt behind, ask scoping question based on that, so you can get more context. So you're using cheaper tokens to validate the answer and get like 80% of the rough context, and they're using the more expensive tokens to give you the final answer. So for instance, in this case, you can have a subscription that has free scoping questions, like these are free because they are like, you can give them as a part of the value, and you're actually paying for like more actual answers or whatever, because this will be more of the output thing, not outcome, right? These are getting answers, but this is the way it usually works. Okay, I see we have 1 more minute, so if anyone, yeah, Nick.
So I know you got really excited about like drafting up new models for revenue calculations now that we're going into this like usage-based era. What do you think it will look like? It won't be ARR anymore, right? It'll be something new?
So I very much recommend Dave Kellogg's presentation, and he goes with something that it still will be the ARR, because you cannot, because there are a lot of, because of the reason of like public market and certain accounting standards are already applied to the kind of companies that are on NASDAQ, and so kind of coming from these big boys to the small ones, you'll still kind of go with the ARR multiple, because you would need to change the industry that was shaping up for the last 20, Salesforce is like 1998, right? So 30 years old industry. So it's probably not something that people want to do now, or it's like change the whole game. So what he comes up with, so the ARR as an output, kind of like your Y in the model will be the ARR, but your X1, X2, X3, X4 variables will just come from various components. And because of the fact that there's coming more components to it, the overall multiple will shift. So what we'll probably see is we might have the fact of raising valuation multiples will not come of the fact because we have a bubble again, but we have just put it more things to the model, and it simply adds up to a higher multiple. So this is kind of the way he explained it. So you just have more things added to the overall recurring business, but this will be hard. But I'm not a finance guy, so I'm just, this is my kind of speculations plus research plus insights. Okay, thank you guys, because we're like after. Thanks. I hope you enjoyed it, and.